Blog Talk Radio. Greetings and welcome to the Sales Sense Reality Talk Show with your host, Mike Krause. Mike has sold over $100 million in sales and offers Fortune 500 strategies, tactics, and tools to sales professionals and business leaders. He created this show with one thing in mind, for sales professionals to share their secrets with each other. Join us every Wednesday at 12 to 12:30 Eastern Time, or sign up for updates on Mike's mailing list at salessensesolutions.com. Mike appreciates you listening and wishes you good luck on your next sales call.
Welcome. I'm Mike Krause with Sales Sense Solutions, and you're listening to the Sales Sense Reality Talk Show. And I'm really excited to have David Frederick on with us today. And he's the founder and principal consultant and CEO of IAIR, the Institute for Advanced Innovation Research. He's a seasoned senior business executive, technologist, and visionary with over 25 years of experience in technology, global operations, strategic management, consulting, integrated marketing, innovation, media, and interactive business industries. I'm really excited to have David on with us today. And Dave, without further ado, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much, Mike, for having me on the program. I'm really excited to spend today talking about some great things.
Absolutely. And kick off here and just tell us a little bit more about you to the listeners and some things about you that make you unique, and then we'll jump in and ask some questions. Thank you.
Sure. Well, as you said, Mike, in the beginning, I'm the principal consultant and CEO of IAIR. IAIR essentially is a strategy, management, and innovation consulting organization that works with a variety of businesses and a variety of different industry verticals. Really, the things that I bring to the table and make things very interesting for my clients is I have a very diverse industry background. I've been in the industry for 25 years. I've worked with small startup organizations all the way through to leading a global software consulting practice for a global publicly traded company. So I've had the opportunity to work in a variety of environments and in challenges that, a lot of different folks are trying to deal with today, especially in today's economy. So my background really enables me to kind of change the status quo for many organizations, whether it be from a management standpoint, an optimization, an innovation, sales, marketing, and product development. So I bring a plethora of information to the table that I think will be successful for my clients and hopefully for your listeners.
Absolutely. And, let's just kick it off. The word innovation means so much to so many people. What does that mean for a company to be an innovator or to believe in innovation?
Well, it's a great question. And when I always hear the term innovation, and when I talk to clients that say, well, we need to look at innovation, we got to find a way to innovate, that's a very nebulous term. It's kind of like saying insurance. There's so many different types of insurance out there. So what is it that we mean by innovation? And usually I'll spend a lot of time working with my clients to identify really what is it that you're looking to innovate on. Are you looking to innovate on your process? Are you looking to innovate on the way you manage? Are you looking to innovate new products and services or how to deliver those products and services? So what I try to do is really kind of focus in on what it is you're trying to do. And then more importantly, why are you trying to do that? What's driving that innovation? Is it to build sustainable competitive advantage? Is it looking at trying to improve the way you build products and services? Or is it simply that you're feeling market pressure that you need to innovate something to stay relevant in the marketplace? So, it's always interesting when I talk to folks and they express issues and challenges around innovation, because really the first part to any type of innovation is to determine what it is you're trying to innovate. So, I find that really interesting, and I'm not sure how many of your listeners find this challenge, but it seems to be coming up more and more. And I think, Mike, the big issue really comes down to market pressure. For whatever reason, people feel this intense desire and need because the market's forcing them to try to innovate. They need to appear as though they're innovating. And where they fail is they're not really looking at what am I trying to innovate. Am I innovating just for the sake of innovation, or am I actually innovating to do something better? Am I looking at changing my status quo as I move forward in my business? So, those are some very interesting kind of paradigms. And one of the things that I do with my clients is I leverage a variety of different frameworks and strategies around innovation, some of which I put together through my experience that has worked, as well as looking at other types of strategies that come out of MIT and out of Wharton and Harvard Business School, and you look at how to apply those to the client's particular need. But really, the biggest thing that I find is most businesses have a hard time understanding what it is they want to innovate. They know they need to innovate, or they believe they need to innovate, but they just don't know what it is they actually have to innovate on or upon. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. It's kind of, they know they need to do it, but they don't know the first step. It's always some of those things that is the hardest thing to do is the first step. Every great journey begins with the first step. And I think, Dave, that a lot of small companies think that they can't be like a big company and innovate. And I think that's totally not true. Don't you agree?
I do. I really do. And a lot of times I'll hear, Mike, people will say, you know what, we know we need to innovate, but we're a small to medium-sized business. We just can't afford, to innovate like the big guys out there. And my response to that is that's not true. Innovation really is broken down into let's call them a couple of buckets. And it goes back to what is it that you're trying to innovate. Many, many times, organizations are innovating and they don't even know it. And what I mean by that is there's something called lead user innovation. And this was something that was pioneered by a guy by the name of Erich von Hippel out of MIT. And Erich's premise was, and he's built kind of this model around leveraging this what's called lead user innovation, where you engage with your customers, you engage with your clients to innovate your products. And what I mean by that is, for example, and I'm going to use somebody really big in this example. Let's take Apple as an example. You come out with the iPod, and you've got such great clients. You've got so many customers that are extremely passionate about the Apple brand, about the Apple products, and particularly about the Apple iPod, that these people start creating communities, and they start creating user groups and ideas, and they share these ideas. And what ends up happening is, instead of the traditional models of, product development, marketing, sales, engineering, we're all going to get together, create an innovation funnel, we're going to come up with ideas, and then we're going to start sorting through those ideas and then implementing certain concepts and product features and functions and come up with this product roadmap. That's kind of an internally driven innovation process, and that's been traditionally the way things have been for quite some time. However, when you look at the lead user innovation model, your clients are actually driving your product strategy and what you need to be putting in your products, and ultimately how you're innovating your next generation of solutions. And by tapping into that kind of, I want to call it a subculture, but that alternative culture that exists of your users and the people that are using iPods and are coming up with new ideas, new ways to do things with them, that really starts feeding some very relevant and very critical information into the product innovation strategy. Because what happens now, and what happens traditionally is, most organizations will build products that they think people want. And in most cases, they're building products that they really think they want, not really what the market needs. But by utilizing something like lead user innovation, you're actually in a position to really get this mainline stream right into your product strategy that's telling you what my clients are doing, how they're using it, why they're using it, what's of value to them. And so it takes a lot of that guesswork out. And what it does, which is really important, it changes the paradigm from being reactive to being responsive. And most companies today have a challenge, whether it's consumer electronics, whether it's professional services, whether it's, software. Most organizations are stuck in this reactive mode where they're reacting to market conditions. They're reacting to what their clients are telling them. They're reacting to, the finances, general markets, those types of things. If you change the paradigm from reactive to responsive, you'll find you're much more efficient and you're much more successful in innovating and delivering solutions and products to your customers that they really want and will be more than willing to buy. So it's very interesting. And as you said earlier, many small businesses really get frustrated because they think, well, we can't do that. And that's just not the case. It's just you need to change your paradigm on how you think and how you approach things, and using things like lead user innovation and really kind of tapping into what your clients are doing with your products and services and leveraging that, I think are really, really important steps to kind of defining that innovation strategy.
Absolutely, and you bring up another good point of the first steps, or what you refer to as globalization and multicultural. We live in a big, big world, and so many times a small business person just doesn't know where to start or where to begin to be a global provider. Can you help the listeners walk through a little bit about, what would be the first steps of taking your company from a small to a global company?
Well, you raise a really interesting point, and as our economy changes, as our global, marketplace increases, and the barriers to entry kind of come down, there are more opportunities today for small businesses to be successful on a global scale than there were at any other time. Clearly things like the internet, social networking, offshore development, these types of things help small businesses get their products out there. The challenge, of course, is trying to apply what works here, say, in North America or the United States, and trying to apply that directly into, the Asia-Pacific markets or into markets, say, in EMEA or Europe. It takes some thinking about how do I want to enter these markets, what works, what doesn't work. And what I mean by that is more than just, a pricing model or a distribution model. It's more of a psychology and an approach and a strategy that you can take to this growth, because what works in other countries may not necessarily work, in our country. And a great example of this is even looking at how to deal with, client Canada versus the United States, or in Australia, or in the UK, where we all kind of speak the same language. There's tremendous challenges there, and I think one of the big challenges for small businesses is that they have a very hard time, either one, transitioning that business, their existing business, over to a globalized business, and then two, how to sustain that business. So let's take those two things, in order. The first thing is how do we transfer or expand our business from an operations standpoint to take advantage of global markets? Well, the great thing is that we've got technology in place like the web and like social networking and Twitter and Facebook and mediums in which to communicate our message, whether it be about our products or about our services, to a global audience at relatively low cost. Now, that's a blessing and a curse, because that means the more stuff you put out there, it may not be hitting the mark. And if I may, let me just relate a really interesting story that I talk about when I speak about this type of thing. There's a large vacuum cleaner company out of Europe. I'll mention them. They're Electrolux. And the story goes that when they looked at getting into the United States, they tried to come up with a great brand slogan. And what was really great about the vacuum cleaners and what really sold them throughout Europe was the fact that Electrolux had these, 12-amp motors that just, had incredible suction, which would get dirt out and all these other things. So, being in Europe, they really thought, well, we'll use the slogan that we've used over here, over in Europe, which was very successful, and we'll apply it in the United States. Not thinking about the ramifications of language and what that implies, so forth and so on. And the approach and the slogan ultimately became Electrolux. It really sucks. And as ironic as that sounds, that made a lot of sense to the company back in Europe because, it did. That's what they were known for, great suction, great products. But taking that approach and just trying to apply it into another market obviously sent the wrong message. And it took some time for them to kind of turn that around and figure out how to best brand that and market it effectively in the United States. So that, maybe not to that extreme, that does happen here in the United States. When we try to take our companies and we try to apply our products and our services to different areas, and there's stories upon stories of American companies, whether it's in their branding, in their naming of their products, in the pricing, you go on and on and on, of the things that they do that simply don't work or can be counterproductive to the success of the product. So what I would recommend is when looking at taking your products to a different area, the first thing you got to look at is communication. How am I going to communicate my value proposition to my distributors, to my sales outlet, to ultimately, my consumers? How do I communicate that? Because again, what works here may not work there. Secondly, there's things that you need to look at, such as pricing models, the way people buy, the buying habits. We could spend all day talking about these things, but the good news is the ability to expand and grow to global markets has never been easier than it is now. But the fundamental challenges of communication, marketing, branding, those types of things still play a very critical role, and they're more sensitive because you're in different environments. And again, culturally, the way people look at things in the UK is different than they look in Germany versus how they look in Italy versus how they look in Morocco. So you need to be cognizant of those cultural and social ramifications in your business model if you want to go after those areas. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You hit a key point with communication, and that goes back to sales, asking the right questions and understanding your prospect. And in this case, it could be an entire country. What works over here in the U.S. does not work over in China, and vice versa. We're just two different cultures, and I think a lot of times salespeople and business owners, they just think, well, this is how it is, and this is how it's going to be. That's not true. You have to adapt your business models and your product to different cultures. For example, I always remember in college we had a case study with KFC, and they went over to China. Well, China, they like to see their food, so they had to build display cases. Over here, we're happy with the picture, but over there, they want to see it,
That's right. That's right. And, you bring up a really interesting point when we talk about communication and the questions to ask. That I think is one of fundamental, regardless of whether we're talking about marketing, we're talking about sales, we're talking about operations. Communication and understanding the right questions to ask are critical to any success. I think where companies start to fall down is they're not asking the right questions. They're not thinking about things in, and I hate using cliches like holistic, but really they're not looking at things in the holistic manner of how does this impact my business, not just from a sales standpoint, but from a marketing standpoint, from a cost standpoint, pricing, execution strategy, the whole 9 yards. And asking the right kind of questions is critical, as you know, to doing things. And I always tell my clients, this is one of the things I always harp on, is look, you need to be able to adapt, overcome, and then execute. And that's the biggest thing I think for success in trying to get into global markets. There's lots of things that you're going to have to adapt to, and you're going to have to overcome in some cases. But once you do that, you need to execute. And if you fail, you just got to pick yourself up and go again. I always tell my clients, look, if you're not failing, you're not trying. And so you've got to try. You've got to keep. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I laugh because that's such a great slogan, is that it's so true. If you're not pushing the edge and if you're not taking chances, well, more than likely your competitors are, and they're over there frustrating too and trying to figure things out. You're not alone. But if you're sitting back in the corner waiting for the light to turn on, and scared and cuddled up in the dark, and you don't want to take any chances, you're probably in the wrong. Business isn't for you, because that business is about taking risks, and putting yourself out there. So I just laugh about that. It's so true.
It is true. It's ironic, but yet it is true. And the thing that I think small businesses really need to keep in mind, and I talk about this when I work with them, is, and you touched on this, this is a hyper-competitive marketplace. There was a time when, being an American business, you were kind of at the top of the food chain. You could go into these other markets and you would still be the top dog because, you were an American business. That's changing radically. We're seeing businesses coming into Europe, entering into the U.S. marketplace, Chinese business and other businesses from Asia coming into the U.S., just as we're going back out. And so we're starting to see, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say a level playing field, but what we're seeing is extremely hyper-competitive marketplaces. And, that's where, and I really, really hammer this home with my clients, this is where you need to focus on what I call decommoditization. You don't want to become a commodity where all of a sudden everybody's comparing you to price. Because that's not a philosophy that I believe in and not one that I coach my clients on. I believe in sustainable competitive advantage, and the way you develop sustainable competitive advantage is by delivering value. The minute you get out of value and you start competing on price, you become a commodity, and you will never win on a commodity, because especially today, because there's businesses all over the world that can do it faster and cheaper than you can. So we need to focus on driving value, and that gets you out of that kind of bottom-feeding, free-for-all where everybody's at, whether you're going out into global markets or you're trying to expand in your current market, whatever that current market may be. You got to get out of the commoditization play.
Absolutely. I just did 2 presentations yesterday and actually today, and the first question that the people in the audience said is, well, price. And I go, that is just totally wrong, and I've changed their minds at the end of my presentation. If you lead with price, they will take you down with price, and you are no different than anyone else out there. It always comes back to your value proposition, and it always comes back to selling value, because if they're only looking for price, that means the minute you have to raise prices, they're gone. You haven't created anything. They don't know even what they bought. They bought a number. It's just, I'm glad you brought up that point, because so many people skip it.
Well, it's really, really important. I mean, you're in sales. You deal with clients like this just as I do. And the thing that I really focus on, when looking at value is, if you, as you said, if you lead with price, you're dead in the water. You haven't even started yet. And because you know what? What happens is, and I see this a lot with software companies, where they'll do a great job. They'll start talking to the VP of marketing and the real key buyers, and they'll get buy-in, but then they'll get pushed into procurement to finalize the deal. And the challenge is procurement. They don't care. To them, you're no different than the toiletry and janitorial supplies they have to buy for the facility. I need to know what my lowest price is going to be. And if you haven't driven value home, you're going to get lumped in with all of those commodities. And you, in today's business, I don't believe you could be successful and grow your business by playing in that game on price. It's not where you want to be. And I would go so far as to say, if you find yourself in a sales call or in a situation where you're talking price at the beginning or it's all about price, then you've not done your job as a salesperson, because you've not delivered and you've not created the value that you need to be doing for your business. You've lost control of the sale, and you've fallen into this, this commodity play, and then you're just not going to succeed there, and you'll never win there, because there's always somebody who will do it cheaper and faster. May not be as well, may not have the same value, but you know what? Shame on you, because you didn't deliver the value. You didn't convey that sustainable competitive advantage.
I agree with you, Dave. And actually, the last day or two, I've been going back and forth with a salesperson representing a very large company that sells a software solution that I'm interested in. And he said, well, we're a publicly traded company. We have a sale. And they started out at $5,000. And within 6 minutes, I just said, well, I need a discount. Because I'm in the game of sales, and I know most people, salespeople are out there, they lead on price, so I take them down with price. And within 6 minutes, I had him down to 50% off. That went from $5,000 to $2,500 in 6 minutes. And I ask the listeners right now, do you have one of these people that you're employing? Imagine what that does to a company. And now I don't see any value, Dave, anymore in it. If you discounted 50%, my value perception is, well, why isn't it free now? You know,
Right.
It's insane how many people discount so fast. And 85% of sales professionals and small business owners will discount price without even the prospect asking them. It's funny how that works, but anyway.
Well, let me ask you this, Mike. And this is a really interesting topic and a very interesting question because I agree with you 100%, and I see it all the time when I coach sales teams on these types of things. But let me ask you, I mean, do you see this as a situation where there is a perceived, I don't want to say panic, but a perceived fear that I've not been trained, I don't believe in the value proposition of my company, I've got to sell product, so I'm afraid, so I'm just going right for price, and I'm going to give you the bottom line. And, you could argue, a lot of people say, all right, well, that's our strategy because we know we inflate the price by, X percent so that when we do discount 50%, we're still at ultimately where we wanted to be. I disagree with that philosophy, by the way, but, I mean, what do you think's driving that? I mean, do you think people are, it's just, they're so scared that they've got to do anything to get the deal that they just, give up and roll over? Or what do you think, what's driving that?
I think, and that's a great question, I think what's driving it is that they haven't been trained on the value proposition. They haven't spoke to someone like yourself or myself and positioned their company as a strength, and they're under a pressure of quota. And maybe which is a critical error that a lot of companies make, is that the salesperson's goal is units. So let's say that person sold me today. That would be one unit instead of revenue or profitability. Well, then that kind of derails the whole strategic plan from the company's point of view. If they're selling widgets and they need to sell 100 widgets, doesn't matter what it comes in at price, they're not properly aligned with the strategic goal of the company. And I think it's a panic button. I think just like when I mentioned today in the seminar, well, why do people buy? They all said price. And that just means that there's so much more information people can get out there and not push for price. I mean, it's just a lack of education, I think.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that. And it amazes me when, and as I said, I've dealt with clients that are large publicly traded clients to, small early stage clients. And what just amazes me is the lack of understanding that it's not how much money you're bringing in, it's how much you keep. And if you're screwing up your margin because you're giving away things because you're afraid and you've got to get that deal and you've got to get that price, well, you're really not making any money. In fact, you're probably costing the company more money than you're bringing in by playing in that commodity role because you just cannot make it up in the margin or make it up in volume like you used to be able to do. It's just not there anymore. And so many businesses today, again, they're panicked because they've got to get the numbers in, they've got to get sales in, and I appreciate that. But you've got to really be smart about it because it's not the total revenue you're bringing in, it's how much of that revenue you can keep. And if you're throwing your margins down the toilet because everything's on price, you're putting yourself at best at a really bad disadvantage, and at worst, you're probably dooming your organization.
I 100% agree. I mean, there's nothing more than that. And I love to have more conversation. Unfortunately, we're at the end of our time already. It goes by fast when you're having fun. I think the value, though, is in our conversation to our listeners is go back to the drawing board and see why people are buying from you and what is your value. And please, don't discount. Use that as a last resort. It is, if that's the deal breaker and you're lined up and you have to come down 10%, you better have a conversation. By the way, Dave, that sales rep didn't even pick up the phone. That was all over email. I imagine what I could do if I got them on the phone. Isn't that incredible?
They'd be paying you for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, oh, maybe they'll pay me, right? And it's not but it was not a commodity situation. They're selling something that is unique, so it's kind of funny that they're trying to commoditize on price, but you are unique. I should want to see that value. But anyway, close out with a little bit more on yourself and how people can reach out and connect with you if they have questions or concerns, and tell them a little bit more about how they can get a hold of you, Dave.
Sure, I appreciate that. If folks want to reach out to me, whether they want to ask me some questions or just reach out and chat or learn more about my organization, they can do so. They can certainly visit my website. The website address is instituteair.org. instituteair.org. And they can also reach me via email at Frederick, Frederick, @instituteair.org. And I would look forward to hearing from them, and certainly be happy to share my thoughts and talk with them and do what I can to help.
Absolutely. Well, Dave, I really appreciate taking time to share your thoughts and ideas with my listeners, and thank you so much. And I wish everyone on the call good luck on their next sales call, and let us know if you need any help. Thanks again, and enjoy your day.
Likewise. Thank you.
Yep. Bye, Dave.
Take care.